It's February 7th, and I'm out here working in an area that I've shown from a couple different angles in some different videos. Right here, this road is basically running north-south, so I'm facing north right there. And this is a 6-year-old planting of persimmons, mostly persimmons, American persimmons and pawpaws. And then to the east, that's where I made a brush wall, kind of heading back some of the black locust to the east here. And I'm working in a spot to the north of this, and I'll just walk over there and show you what I'm doing. Now looking to the south, you can see the pawpaws and persimmons in the foreground, and then in the back, those stumps are the pollards of the black locust. You can see the fence behind that, the existing locust to the east. And then the land slopes down to the north, and that field to the right, which is the same size as the one that we're looking at closer, is going to be planted in orchard trees this spring. And here is a block of unmanaged area, which I'm starting to do something with. It was a tough angle to see from over there, but this field continues sloping down to the north for another 300-400 feet. And there's a few trees that I left as I was clearing out on the side here, some mulberries, a couple walnuts. This area is going to have a little bit more of an orderly planting, and then this spot is going to have a pretty chaotic planting, which I'm maybe more excited about in a lot of ways. I'll go over there and go into a little bit more detail of what the plan is. So I spent about 3 hours this morning. I had fixed up a chainsaw that I haven't used for about 8 years, which was really exciting that I got it running, and had to fix a whole bunch of stuff on it. And it was running in such good shape that I decided to come and tackle this project this morning. And so what I've been doing here is, this is something that I think a lot of us who manage land and are interested in planting fruit trees and gardening and stuff like that should do more of, which is trying to change an existing forest here into a quote-unquote productive food forest without doing super heavy intervention. And I know in a sense this does look like pretty heavy intervention because there's a lot of chopped material here. However, I'm not going to disturb the soil in this area at all. I'm only going to be managing vegetation. The only soil disturbance will be for digging planting holes, really. Potentially digging out or ripping out some vegetation with the roots. But other than that, the soil is not going to be touched. So for example, when you start clearing like this, you start to find all kinds of things. This here is a nice little apple tree. I've never seen fruit on it, but now that it's released from a black locust, from some elms, from a gigantic honeysuckle, we're gonna get this thing a lot more growth. And it's kind of in and around an American hazelnut. You can see all the male catkins there. So as I go through, I'm not just cutting everything, I am keeping a whole lot of different things. We've got a pretty nice size and a smaller black walnut over there. There's an elderberry. And so I'm working pretty carefully not to disturb any of these plants that I might want. As I go, oh, there's a lot of grapes too in here, which makes the clearing a lot more challenging because everything's connected. This clump of dead ash are all gonna have to come down in one group because grapes are connecting all of the tops. I'll probably do a video on how to accomplish that later on. So as you can see, I'm generating a lot of organic material here. And I am gonna have to have a plan because this is a lot of slash. I normally don't like to bring this much slash down at one time. I like to take 3 or 4 trees down, 3 or 4 bushes, and then manage that and then move on to the next part. But everything here was so connected with grapes that it was almost impossible. A tree would be hung up and you'd have to cut another one, and that would be hung up. And so it kind of got into, well, what you see here, which is not the most exciting to deal with, but it's not the worst thing in the world either. So what I'm going to do is most of the larger sections that could be used for firewood, those will get taken out. And then all of the brushy stuff, I probably am going to put into brush rows and plant next to them. There's a bunch of different options there. I think the best, but one of the more labor intensive options would be to bring my biochar kiln over here and biochar all of it. There are plenty of good reasons to just put all of the slash in a pile and burn it. Unfortunately, it does release more carbon into the atmosphere than if you would biochar it, which, you know, about 80% in the next 10 years of the carbon would be in the atmosphere by breaking down and composting, as opposed to only 50% would basically ever make it into the atmosphere, or at least over the next many hundreds of years if you biochar it all. Anyway, the problem is when you come in and cut an area like this, you are releasing all of this vegetation and all of this. We haven't killed a single plant here today. All of these trees will resprout. All of the bushes will resprout. The shrubs, the roses, the sumac, the honeysuckle, the grapevines. And if we just try to plant some trees in here and let them figure it out, it would be a disaster. So we're going to have to take all of this material and make it so that we can access this area and maintain it a little bit. A lot of these locusts are going to be here for coppice, so a lot of the regrowth is going to be used for feeding other trees that get planted here. There are really a lot of different ways that one could approach this. As I said, biochar is great, but it does take quite a bit of effort. So I would either have to bring this big pit over or dig a pit here. And there are lots of traditions of forestry, sustainable indigenous forestry practices that would involve a lot more burning and kind of thoroughly disturbing this area so that new plantings would have a much better head start. We're right close to the road. There's power lines. I don't think I want to have an enormous brush fire here. I could certainly make a pile over there and have a pretty good sized fire and burn a lot of this. But if I can, I think I'm going to try to go somewhere in the middle, dig a pit out here, and do the quick cone pit method of biocharing. One of the reasons I think biocharing would be quite a bit better than making brush walls in this situation is that if you make a brush wall here, you can expect, with all the grapevines and the blackberries and different kinds of brambles and roses, you can expect that it would be used as a trellis by all of those different species, and it would become truly unmanageable. I mean, you wouldn't be able to get really anywhere near it. You wouldn't be able to cut regrowth that was growing into it because there would be all this dead branch material. And so I think it would be more trouble than it's worth because we ultimately wouldn't be able to maintain it at all. I'd rather be able to walk somewhat comfortably on the ground, or at least be able to weed whack or scythe the ground a little bit better, because that way we can maintain whatever gets planted in here. So I think the plan will generally be to take all of this debris, put it into a pile close to where it lays, down there maybe, dig a pit, do the cone pit method, have the biochar that we can use to amend the planting holes, and sort of continue that pattern on. And I'll just go and show you the other side of this block. So that part has already been done. There's quite a bit more stuff to come down. There's lots of hidden gems in here. This is a pear right there with the spurs on it. That's another pear in the center. There's some dead ash for firewood. There's another pear that got a little bit hurt by an ash falling on it. And there are a few June berries. In fact, that's a big Juneberry right there. Nice smooth trunk. And then there's a couple really nice big size apples down there. And ultimately, it's a pretty large area. And I always get a little bit conflicted about intervening in a spot like this. I mean, it has its own intrinsic value, that's for sure. All of these plants are here, building soil, providing habitat. And, you know, it's hard to say what is a healthy forest and what is not a healthy forest. I mean, we have things like biological diversity, we've got net primary productivity, all those types of things that we could measure and use to try to help us figure out whether it's a healthy or not forest. But at the end of the day, I can't really eat much out of this little area, maybe almost anything at all, except a couple pears. Actually, there is a patch of daylilies I know about here that I could dig up and eat those. So these are all species of trees and shrubs that don't need any help to grow. They will grow in any wild, you know, unmanaged area. We've got, that's a European buckthorn right there. There's poison ivy in here. Of course, all the ash are dead or dying from emerald ash borer, black cherry, a couple different species of maples, sumacs. All of these things are kind of everywhere in the landscape that has been abandoned, you know, old field kind of succession. And so it's not that means, okay, it's fine to kill them, but it does make sense to me to always be trying to produce more of our food here and to work with the landscape here to meet our needs, because if we just leave this to be quote unquote wild, and we still want to eat food, then we're just gonna have to buy it from someone else who did this. So I would really prefer to do this in as thoughtful of a way as possible, so that I have food out of the area and haven't really, you know, just bulldozed and completely destroyed this land, but definitely changed the species composition. Here on this buckthorn, you can see a lot of new, healthy, vigorous growth. That's 2-year-old growth. My friend Sean and I were in here 2 years ago, heading some of these buckthorns back, with the idea at that time to give a little bit more light to this pear and a couple other pears that are back there. And since that time, basically all the remaining ash in this stand have completely died. And as a result, I think the pear did get some more light, but the buckthorn really are able to thrive in that kind of condition, because you can see all these in front of me, these straight trunks are ash that are dead now, and so there's a lot more sun reaching the ground here. And if we don't intervene at all, it'll mostly be those super fast growing, vigorous vines, bushes, and the buckthorns that will take this over for the next probably 5 or 10 years, and then the maples will emerge on top of that, and that'll be nice for them, but we won't be able to eat anything from here. So instead, we're going to be taking out all of this dead wood for firewood and try to open this space up quite a bit so that we can mow it not with like a push mower, but at least be able to scythe and have accessible walkways and plant a whole bunch of trees. And so this is going to be a little bit of a chaotic forest garden, but with the idea that we're going to keep whatever's here that is of value to us and augment it with a bunch of other stuff that we think will grow well with that and will be vigorous and easy to maintain in this pretty wild context.